Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you've all had a rewarding and an amazing first day at ARW. My name is Mackenzie Smeyrud, and I am in my third year at HLS. I fell in love with our school from the moment I'd found it, a hidden gem in my very own backyard as a Bloomington local. It was the first time that I had the international focus I'd been longing for, where I could pursue my ambitions in global security and diplomacy. Our assistant dean, Isak, likes to tell the story about the first time we met. I was interviewing for scholarships, and when he asked if I had any questions for him, I said, "Can I only take classes at HLS, or do I have to venture into the rest of campus?" He laughed and told me I could do whatever I wanted. Ever since, I didn't mean to get him in trouble. Ever since, HLS has felt like home, and the faculty has been just as supportive along the way. Anytime that I have a crazy idea or a new daydream that I want to make a reality, my mentors at HLS and IU have sat with me, mapped out the road to success, and saw the vision. For example, about a year ago, I just decided that I wanted to go into intelligence and security. Ever since, Dr. Carol Choksey has taught me everything I know about the field, and I've leveraged this knowledge to secure several high-profile interviews and offers for this coming summer. More, when I met Olya, one of HLS's best academic advisors, during my freshman fall, I told her I wanted to do what had never been done before, and I believed I could complete an integrated bachelor's and master's degree program in international studies in 4 years instead of 5. Olya spent the next few semesters sitting with me and planning out the course schedule, class by class, always checking in to make sure that I wasn't taking on too much, but never stifling my drive. I have been encouraged to be ambitious, and here's where that's led me. I went to New York City as a student delegate to attend sessions at the United Nations and got backstage access to the pinnacle of global governance, the organization that inspires my passion for this work. I spent a summer in Paris, France, to sharpen my language skills. I was head of delegation for the United States in a strategic simulation with then HLS Dean Chorchiari and in partnership with the U.S. Army War College. This summer, I'm headed to Atlanta, Georgia to begin a series of rotations at Delta Airlines where I will work in corporate security intelligence and risk mitigation until I graduate. Already, I've had amazing opportunities that I am incredibly proud of. It's hard to say where I'll end up, what roles I'll have throughout my life, but I feel that it will be wonderful and challenging and exciting because of the foundation of my education at the Hamilton Lugar School and Indiana University have prepared me for the successful, fulfilling life that I am working towards. Maybe I'll get the chance to work in global security for the Walt Disney Company, or maybe I'll be Secretary of State. Maybe I'll have the opportunity to follow in Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield's footsteps and become the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. Maybe I'll even be president. The possibilities are endless. Is that an endorsement? The possibilities are endless, and I am forever grateful for the women who came before me and the ones who stand with me, proving that I can be anything so long as I set my mind to it. It is now my absolute honor and privilege to introduce our keynote session. Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield will share remarks on her remarkable career, after which she will be joined for a fireside chat by Bloomington's interim provost, John Chorchiari, you got a long title now, who many of us know as the former dean of our very own Hamilton Lugar School. Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield is one of the most distinguished diplomats of our time. A career Foreign Service officer, she served as the United States Ambassador to the United Nations in President Biden's cabinet and on the National Security Council, bringing her decades of experience in diplomacy, development, and multilateral negotiations to the highest levels of global governance. Her postings have taken her across Africa, Asia, and Europe, and her commitment to diplomacy and human rights has made her one of the most respected voices in international affairs. She holds a bachelor's degree from Louisiana State University and a master's degree from the University of Wisconsin, and her honors include a Presidential Rank Award and the American Foreign Service Association's 2025 Award for Lifetime Contributions to American Diplomacy, a distinction that speaks for itself. It is a privilege beyond words to have her here with us today, and please join me in welcoming Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just start by saying how delighted I am to be here. Thank you for that amazing introduction. And I do expect to see your name on something one day. Interim provost, deans, professors, students, my good friend, Dorothy. Dorothy was my deputy in New York. So all people who are successful in amazing jobs are successful because they have amazing deputies like Dorothy Shea. So Dorothy, thank you very much. I'm really delighted that you're here with me. I also want to thank you for loaning me your glasses. I tend to forget my glasses all the time because I don't need them to see, I just need them to read. And so I probably would have been going around the room looking for someone to loan me some glasses to do this with. So it's really a pleasure for me to be here, and I want to start by thanking the Hamilton Lugar School of Global and International Studies here at Indiana University for the invitation and for convening the 11th Annual America's Role in the World Conference. Thank you very much for your comments, and I'll look forward to maybe having a discussion with you afterwards. So let me begin by acknowledging the recent passing of Congressman Lee Hamilton. He left an indelible mark on our country through his voice, through his advocacy, and through his example. The title of this conference today is very timely. We are in a historical moment of change, not just in our country, but within the world. And I believe America's role in the world today is more important than it's ever been. We were the voice, and notice I said were. We were the voice of reason around the world. We were the voice of democracy and human rights, yet that voice has become silent. And as a result, our allies, our partners, and adversaries are shifting. You know, over 40 years ago, I found myself wanting, just like you, to help define America's role in the world abroad. So there I was, 1982. Most of the students here weren't even born then. I was issuing visas during my first tour as a consular officer in Jamaica. The work that I was doing, though not always riveting, felt meaningful to me. So I worked hard day in and day out to promote those important values of freedom, values of liberty, and values of respect abroad. At that point, I never could have imagined that I would continue in that work and have the opportunity to serve as President Biden's ambassador to the United Nations, and in his own words, America's voice to the world. My life story gave no hint of this. I grew up in the segregated rural South, the oldest of 8 children to hardworking but poor parents. And one of my brothers would like to say we were so poor that there was only one O in poor. But yet, despite the odds and the unlikeliness of it, I've had the opportunity to represent our country, to represent our nation and our culture and our values to the world. This is what I believe our role is, to show that anyone with any background led by principles and values can become a part of the greater world ecosystem. Over the course of my career, I have worked for 6 presidents, both Republicans and Democrats. I served on President Biden's cabinet. I worked as the Director General of the Foreign Service and the Director of Personnel and the Assistant Secretary for Africa under President Obama, an ambassador to Liberia appointed by President Bush. Beyond these roles, I would serve most of my career in doing humanitarian work, working to find solutions for some of the most vulnerable people in the world. And for me, that's the most important part of my career. Along the way, I've been surrounded by extraordinary colleagues in both civil and foreign service, people who, like me, were driven by a shared commitment to improve lives and to make a difference, one act of kindness, one cable written at a time. Collectively, we help define America's role in the world. However, now that I've retired from the Foreign Service, I recognize the tremendous growing pains and pressure our role is undergoing. In a real way, we are rewriting the rules of the road established in the aftermath of World War II. The very values of integrity, respect for diversity, and freedom written in our Constitution, the values written on the walls of the UN and in the hearts of our international community, all those values are under pressure. We're witnessing on a daily basis war dropping its painful consequences onto the lives of basic citizens. Even food and water are being denied across countries and conflicts. Surely, this is not how it should be. At the same time as I watched the historic launch of NASA's Artemis II mission just last week, I was reminded of our capabilities, of human capabilities to go beyond the once confining boundaries of our planet, of our possibility to save the world from the scourge of war. Yet, we have not. So in this crucial time for both our country and the entire world, the question of America's role in the world is more relevant than ever before. But I believe beyond simply asking what America's role is, what America's role should be, we must ask ourselves what we want America's role to be and what role we want to play in that. So today I have 3 asks of each of you. First, you should define for yourself what America's role in the world should be, because when America is at its best, we become the beacon of hope for the world. Our example of compassion and kindness, an important soft power, acting as a conduit to further our strategic objectives and helping all people along the way. We have fed starving people. We have brought health care and assistance to those most in need. And we've helped rebuild countries devastated by human and environmental disasters. And this reminds me of the time that I spent as the US ambassador to Liberia. I arrived in Liberia immediately after the war. And a few weeks after arriving there, I took a walk down the streets of Monrovia while just looking around. And it was a particularly tense, and most people were staying close to their home. But as I walked, a neighbor of the ambassador's residence came out to greet me. And he looked at me with relief, and he said, "Seeing the American ambassador walking gives me the sense that we are safe and that there is hope. So we have to show up for the world." That moment has stayed with me for a very long time, the fact that I'm mentioning it even today. Yes. So being present when it is steady, when it shows up, can mean everything to people who are watching and waiting. Second, I would like to encourage all of you to get up and get involved. I'm not concerned about the students who are protesting. They are standing up and they're getting involved. You may disagree with them, I may disagree with them, but they're showing that they have an interest in the world. So I do appreciate that. You need to be civically engaged in your communities, and you need to use your voice. You see, throughout my career, I was always struck by the importance of civic engagement, when I served in Switzerland, in Liberia, in New York. Civic engagement matters. Whether it was meeting with the young people in Ukraine who voiced their deep desire to go back to school, a young woman in Sudan who told me she had lost all hope after what happened during the war, or stopping to listen to the Gaza demonstrators outside the embassy who asked if they could pray for me, could pray for my strength to end the war. I listened. As ambassador to the United Nations, I went to great lengths to hear the voices of the people. What do they want? What are they struggling for? What are they struggling with? How can I help? Why is it important for me to listen to them? It is through these voices, through these stories and their struggles, I approach the world and America's role within it. Finally, no matter how hard that is, no matter how uncomfortable you are, I want you to remember that the most important thing you can do is be kind. Kindness and compassion is our superpower, because a more kind and compassionate America has always been our secret sauce. Even in the hard-nosed field of foreign diplomacy, even when we're squaring off against global adversaries, being kind has always been my first move, always. And I know you will find that to be true if you use it. Because being a good person, being a kind person, will get you further in life than anything else. So as we contemplate America's role in the world, I ask each of you to approach it with the same hope we've been offering the world for decades. While we often feel that the world is crumbling before us, there are many people out there, much of them like you and me, fighting for our values, pushing the limits of human capacity to show us that we can do anything. So please, never stop trying, never stop fighting for what is right. You may not win the battle, but the fight is worth it if you try. So John, I'm very grateful for your inviting me to be here in Indiana with you and the IU University. I look forward to our discussion today on these issues and any other issues that students and members of the audience would like to raise. Thank you very much. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna take this pen. Which side do you want me on? Okay.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield, for your service, for your leadership, and also for your remarks and your inspiration, not least for our students. I'm pleased to have the chance to ask you the first few questions in this sort of fireside-style chat, but I want to save most of our time for comments and questions from our audience. Now, as someone who's served in a number of different diplomatic leadership roles, one thread throughout your experience, of course, is humanitarian action. Another is your engagement with multilateral institutions, multilateral diplomacy generally, and international institutions, including the UN. And many of the places where you'd served previously, like Liberia, were places where international institutions had been vital partners to the United States in carrying out US objectives. So at the broadest level for our audience, how would you articulate the value of multilateral diplomacy and multilateral institutions to the advancement of US values and interests?
That's a very interesting question. And first one that's very interesting is far away from New York and Washington, D.C. as we are, because it's a question that I think many Americans outside of the Beltway and New York bubble ask themselves. Why does the UN matter? Why does multilateralism matter? Why does it matter to me? First and foremost, for me, it means we're not alone in the world. We're working with 192 member states of the United Nations around the world on issues of importance to everyone around the world. We're not isolated from problems around the world. We weren't isolated when COVID hit. We're not isolated when natural disasters hit. We're not isolated when the consequences of conflict and war hit. And the multilateral stage is where those issues can be addressed, and most particularly how we respond to those issues. When I think about it, I was told today that there was a very interesting discussion this morning on the impact of agriculture on the world. And for the people here in Indiana, where farming is so important, we saw that impact when the tariffs started to be put in place and farmers started seeing the impact in their pocketbooks. I visited Minnesota and Wisconsin and heard the same kinds of stories from farmers. I was in North Carolina, and pig farmers who relied heavily on China purchases of pork saw the impact. And these are things that we discuss on a regular basis at the UN in all manner of places, not just in the General Assembly. There are lots of specialized agencies where these issues are discussed. We saw the impact, for example, of the war in Ukraine. I didn't know until the war in Ukraine happened that Ukraine was the breadbasket of the world. I knew they provided a lot of wheat. I didn't know the impact of that on the world. And we were able to find a solution through the Black Sea Grain Agreement to get that grain out to the world. So it's in these forums like the United Nations where we can find a meeting of the mind to resolve some solutions. I think the disappointing part of it for me, and I think everybody will be surprised to hear me say this, is that the primary reason that the UN was created, as I said, to prevent the scourge of war, and we have not been able to do that. War raises its ugly head all over the world, all the time. And I know that there's an important interest in talking about what happened in Gaza, but people forgot that tens of thousands of people were killed in Sudan, that millions of people were forced out of their homes in Sudan, that in Haiti, gangs are forcing communities to fall apart. So it's happening in many places around the world, and it's important that we address those issues on an international platform where we may be able to find some solutions.
Thank you. And we hear a lot, of course, about the ways in which the UN and other international bodies are struggling or gridlocked because of resurgent great power competition. But I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about where the UN still has capacity to play a major role in addressing human need around the world, particularly in the humanitarian lane where you spent so much of your career. Where do you see signs of success, signs of hope in terms of the ability of these constrained institutions still to be able to contribute to their missions?
You know, that's where I think the UN has really succeeded, and that is in dealing with humanitarian crises. The World Food Program feeds the world when they are in need, and it's an organization that is headed by an American. She just resigned, but it's a position that has always been held by Americans because we were the largest contributor to the World Food Program. UNICEF, another position headed by an American, making sure that education and health is being brought to children and women around the world. The UN Development Program supporting development needs for people around the world. So those activities of the UN can't be questioned. They could be better, they can be reformed, but they make a difference in people's lives. I saw it in Liberia. Liberia was racked by war for 14 years. Their schools were destroyed, health was destroyed.
The importance of education and peace and human rights, and yet you vote against.
I did vote against that resolution, But there are so many other things that are happening in the UN that I want you to care about as well. Gaza was important, and what we saw happen there was not anything that any of us would want to see happen. But there are other places in the world as well where we can make a difference, and when we can make a difference, we should do it. We don't always make a difference everywhere. We don't always do the right thing everywhere, but when we do the right thing, it matters. And that's why it is so important that we continue to engage around the world.
Thank you. And I want to pick up on your point about the challenges for the United Nations system or multilateral diplomatic structures in general to prevent major conflict. Now we have a major war in Ukraine. Of course, we have war in the Middle East. We have other flashpoints around the world, the Taiwan Strait and others. In spaces where the UN Security Council is not able to act because of divisions among the great powers, what are some other models for thinking about how multilateral diplomacy can nevertheless be instrumental in forging lasting peace?
Well, let me just start with the Security Council. When the Security Council works, when the great powers work together, it makes a difference. So let me give you the example of DPRK. China, Russia, and the United States voted for sanctions against the DPRK. It kept them in check for years until China backed out of it, and then Russia supported them, and they started to veto resolutions, and the DPRK government saw that as a sign that it was okay to continue shooting weapons across the strait to their neighbors. But it worked when it worked. On Syria, Russia had always been the backbone of the Assad regime, but they supported a cross-border resolution that allowed the UN to take food across the border to Syrian people who were in need. And that lasted, during my tenure, for 3 years. We were able to get the Russians to support that resolution. Unfortunately, they didn't support it the last year that I was there, but it made a huge difference during those 3 years. And I went to the border twice to make sure that people knew that we were paying attention to what was happening there. We were able to pass a resolution that put a security force in Haiti to bring some level of security to the Haitian people who were being terrorized by gangs. The Chinese were not happy about it. The Russians stood back, but they allowed the resolution to pass. And despite the fact that we vetoed some resolutions on Gaza, we stepped back and allowed some resolutions to pass. And when those resolutions passed, it made a difference. But here's the thing I want to share with you that will surprise you. And I said it out loud the first time a couple of weeks ago, and it surprised me. Resolutions they make us feel good. So if we'd passed that resolution if we had not vetoed that resolution on Gaza, we would have all felt good. It would not have ended the war. We passed a resolution criticizing the Russians through the General Assembly. We got 143 votes out of 193. Did that end the war? It did not end the war. Ending wars requires the commitment of the countries who are engaged in war to stop fighting. All of the negotiations in the world on Sudan. Sudan is still fighting. Nobody's talking about it, but they're still fighting. Thousands of people are dying. We did all kinds of resolutions and condemnations. It did not end the war. If people are bent on fighting, they're going to fight. And those of us who pass resolutions and yell at people because we're not passing resolutions need to know those resolutions only mean something to you and me. They don't mean anything to the people who are bent on killing people. And what we need to do is continue to stand up. And again, as I said, I appreciate those people who feel so strongly that they want to have their voices heard here. You do need to stand up, but you need to understand the limits of power. And that limit of power is being blocked by people who are bent on fighting because they think they can win a war, and if they give in, they're losing.
Thank you. I want to turn back to the United States role in this and ask you to comment, if you could, on what you see as the most important changes between the administration in which you served as UN ambassador and the current administration. How is that affecting the limits on U.S. power?
I talked about the importance of compassion and kindness, and this is something that, as I said, has been important to me my entire life. People think you're weak if you're kind. They think you're weak if you're compassionate. The people who thought that about me have seen that when they see the other side of me, it's not pretty. But I don't want to show that side, because I think the most effective approach is to approach people with respect and kindness. I'm not seeing that currently. I'm not seeing that in our foreign policy. I'm not seeing that in the statements that are being made by the administration. We could accomplish the exact same thing we're doing without the vitriol, without the nastiness, without the profanity that we're seeing. Because people respect the United States. They respect our power. We don't have to flex. If you're powerful, you don't have to flex your muscle, because people know you're powerful. So they know our power. They know the possibilities of what we can do. And we should be able to do that without having to always carry a big stick and flex our muscle. So that has been my disappointment in this administration. Nobody is going to shed a tear over the Iranian regime being taken out. Nobody is shedding a tear over Venezuela. But we have a constitution, and we have procedures in place that need to be followed so that there's no question about what we are doing. And so I think, as I look at comparing the Biden administration and the current administration, I think they could be more effective if they were less vitriolic.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience to be thinking of what you'd like to ask Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield. So if part of the problem that we have now is signaling a lack of respect, of approaching others with a more hostile or aggressive tone or more transactional tone than we should, what do you see as the most productive steps that U.S. diplomats and other leaders could take in the next few years to begin to repair that? Can we get back from where we are now to the place where we were a few years ago?
Well, when the Biden administration came in 2021, people said to me, how do we know we can respect you? No battle is worth ignoring. Every battle needs to be addressed wherever you are. But you were asking me, in 2021, when the Biden administration came in, and I arrived in New York, missions asked me, how can we trust you? Why should we trust you? How do we know you're really back? And I'm so happy I didn't answer the question, because I didn't know the answer. And now I know the answer. We weren't really back. And so that lack of confidence in us, I mean, so many, when I think of our NATO allies who are dependent on the United States, but let's be truthful, we're dependent on them as well. And so we need to be able to engage with our allies with a sense of respect, an understanding of what our various responsibilities are, and to show them that we understand the symbiotic relationships that we have. And that has not been the case. And I think this time around, it's going to be even harder to convince those countries that we are actually back, that we can be trusted. I heard someone speaking 2 days ago, and it's a person who works on democracy and human rights issues. And he said, we have worked on human rights and democracy issues all over the world. And now we're forced to be in a position where we have to work on democracy and human rights in our own country. And we don't know how to do it because we never expected that we had to defend our democracy at home. We knew we had to defend our democracy abroad, but at home, none of us expected that we had to defend democracy. And then add to that, that we have to convince our friends and our allies that we're reliable. And they are not convinced that we're reliable, and I think it's going to take a generation to get back to that.
Thank you for those thoughts. I'm now going to turn to the audience. Please put your hand up, and when you're called on, a microphone will be brought to you. Please stand, mention your name and your affiliation, and then confine yourself to a single question so we can get lots of people involved. Let's start here. Just here in the center aisle. Thank you, Mackenzie.
First, I would like to start by thanking you for your time today and sharing all of your wondrous knowledge and experience with us. I'm Kelly Branson. I'm a fourth year here at HLS studying international studies with minors in Southeast Asian studies and sociology. I want to ask on a more personal level, how do you keep going with all of the atrocities that you see internationally as someone who wants to go into an international organization, and with everything that is happening internationally now, with all of my awareness of it, I find it to some extent hard to even keep going some days.
You have to. I've been doing this for many years, and one of my earliest memories that I have never, ever been able to forget, going to a refugee camp in Uganda in 1994. And I'm walking with a doctor, worked for one of the NGOs, and we come up on a woman holding a baby, or what I thought was a baby, with arms about this big. And he spent a minute, and he walked to the next person, and I said, "But that child looks so sick." He said, "Before we come back, that child will be dead." And when we came back, the child was dead. I have never, ever forgotten that. It's hard to deal with other people's miseries, but my approach has always been, I can't save the world. I wish I could save the world. I wish I could end the war in Gaza. I wish I could bring peace to the people of Sudan. And don't walk out, listen. You want to listen. So we all fail. But if failure is a reason to quit and not do it, then nobody will do anything. So you have to strengthen your adversity muscles and just go out there and do it and face what you will face and do what you can do. And my approach has always been, I can't save the world, but I might be able to save one person. And if you do that every single day, you will be able to continue to do it.
Both a very heartening and an empowering message. Let's go here over near the aisle.
Yeah.
My name is Marvin Michaelstetter. I'm a first-year student here studying Asian languages and culture, specifically Chinese. Now, my question to you is simply, you earlier mentioned that UN security resolutions were effective in sanctioning North Korea. Later, you mentioned that they would be unproductive when trying to get a ceasefire produced in Gaza. How do you reconcile these two views?
When the superpowers all agree, then we get it done. If they don't agree, we don't get it done. And so that's how I reconcile it. When warring parties don't respect the Security Council, don't respect the UN, and don't care what we say, they're going to fight until the very end. So that's the issue that I see with resolutions. Resolutions don't end wars. Negotiation will end wars. Sitting down, having that hard-nosed, face-to-face, nose-to-nose fight, verbal fight, and negotiating a peace deal is what has ended every single war. And if you can tell me when a resolution has ended a war, I would appreciate that. They've never ended a war. They make us feel good. They make us say,
I'm not talking about your responsibility
Yeah.
for ending a war.
Yeah.
I'm talking about doing your best to at least say that you're trying to do something
Yeah.
to make peace.
yeah, and we do. And when we do,
Please allow her to answer.
yeah, we do. And when the P5, I'll say the P3, I call the P3 Russia, China, and the US, when we all agree, it makes a difference because we use our weight to make sure that people listen to us. And we use it not in the Security Council, but in at the negotiating table. But without that, the resolution, as I said, it gives a sense of it gives a sense of where we are, what we think, but it will not matter if the warring parties are not willing to sit down at the negotiating table and the more powerful countries are not willing to sit and put pressure on them.
Thank you. We'll go to the next question way in the back here with the crimson and cream.
Appreciated the speech, Ambassador. My name is Tatiana Gabrichuk. I'm the Fulbright Scholar from Russia in exile. And my question is actually regarding one of the countries from the Security Council, which is Russia. What is like your, not just experience, but how to put it, like why it makes sense to actually keep speaking with this country in actually keeping this country, considering all the atrocities the government of the country is unfortunately keeping doing, and with all this resolution being flapped because of the way how they started voting, considering the war going on for already 12 years in Ukraine and all the atrocities they're doing. And my focus specifically is on the nuclear power, considering the energy development and the way how Russia, as being the country in Security Council, is actually seizing the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and having the worker there holding hostage for already more than a year or years. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. What my simple answer is, it was not easy to sit across the table knowing what was happening. I think there will be people who say it was not easy sitting across the table from us. They are a permanent member of the Security Council. There's nothing that any of us can do to change that as long as the Security Council exists the way it exists. It's going to require significant changes and reforms to change who are the permanent members of the Security Council. I think it's a discussion we ought to have. We ought to be able to say that a country committing atrocities can't sit in the Security Council and vote. But again, that can be used against any of us, so nobody, not even the United States, would agree to that kind of decision. So we have to live with each other despite the fact that we're not happy to be sitting across the table.
Right here in the center aisle, I have, yes, a microphone will come your way in just a moment.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Betty Tanzi, and I hail down from Purdue. I am a history professor, a Fulbright scholar, senior specialist, an Indiana Humanities scholar, also on the board of the Indiana Council of World Affairs, and it's wonderful to meet people that we've had speak from the Hamilton Lugar Center. Years ago, when I was still in my 30s, I'm 78 now, I worked at the United Nations as a very, very junior employee or staffer, and I've stayed in contact with many of my UN friends and colleagues. And some of them now would like to see reform within the United Nations, and I keep seeing these various petitions floating around and such. One of the concerns, of course, is countries that are willing to increase their defense budget while they're reducing aid, both contributions to within the system, the larger system, and within their own countries. But can you address some of the reforms that you see as needed in an institution that's now 80 years old and could use some reform?
We all need some reform, and the fact that the UN is 80 years old, it was created 80 years ago in a different world. More than half of the members of the UN weren't members of the UN when the UN was created 80 years ago. So it's time to look inside the UN and look at how it works, look at the components and whether these components are the right components. I gave a speech, I think in 2022, announcing that the US would support major reforms in the Security Council and the UN, and some of those reforms included adding additional permanent members of the Security Council, including 3 Security Council members from Africa. There are 2 from Africa. There are 3 non-permanent African seats on the Security Council, but they change every 2 years. So it doesn't give them the power that they might have if they had a longer term on the Security Council. We think that there should be a permanent representative on the Security Council from the Western Hemisphere, from Latin America. There should be a permanent member from Southeast Asia and from South Asia. We announced that we supported India, we supported Japan, and we supported Germany becoming permanent members of the Security Council. Brazil would have to be worked through its own region to have it determine who should be the permanent member, as the Africans will have to do. So that's what the Security Council. But let's look at the broader UN, the bureaucracy. There's a lot that can be done at the bureaucratic level. The UN is too bulky, it's too big, it's too bloated. Agencies are falling all over each other to do the same thing. There's so much duplication. The UN is in the process now of considering who will be the next Secretary General. And I think that new Secretary General, whoever he or she might be, has to establish as the first priority doing that kind of internal reform, setting up some kind of advisory group that will advise the Secretary General on what should be done. I mean, we don't need 22 specialized agencies. We don't need a huge secretariat that is duplicating some of the work that's being done by the specialized agencies. So there's so much that I think can be done to make the UN more efficient and more effective. And I think it just needs to have the wherewithal to do it and the support from the member states.
Thank you. Let's go all the way to back with standing right against the wall.
Ambassador Greenfield, thank you for your speech. It was very informative. Sorry, let me introduce myself. Forgot to do that. My name is Dahlia Townley Bakewell. I'm International Studies, East Asian Languages and Cultures, and Middle Eastern Languages and Cultures student here at IU. And I really appreciated your speech, and I do have some follow-up questions about it. I respect your humanitarian work in many places around the world, but I also think that humanitarian values, you have to be committed to them, and being committed to humanitarian values means upholding them as much as possible. And in this specific instance that's been brought up many times already today, I know that when you represent the US at the UN Security Council, you're representing US foreign policy, you're not necessarily representing your own views. But if you could go back in time to when you cast those votes to veto the ceasefire, would you make that same decision again or not? Thank you.
I like the way you put that question, because it's not always my decision, but what you don't know and what most people don't know is the amount of negotiations that goes on behind the scenes to get us to a place where we're going to make a decision on what we're going to do. And so people talk about that first veto. No one talks about the fact that just 2 months later, we passed a resolution on humanitarian. And I negotiated for that resolution for months. working with the UAE, working with the Algerians, working with the entire GCC, working with the Palestinians to come forward with a resolution that we, the United States, not Linda, the United States could support. And for me, supporting me meant just being allowed to abstain. The resolution that we vetoed in October, I think it was October 18th, it's about 2 weeks after the October 7th. The Brazilians were really adamant that we needed to do the ceasefire resolution. What I said to them is, I'm negotiating with you, but I have to negotiate with Washington. And right now, I don't think I can get Washington to agree to this resolution right now. We need to delay this a bit. I don't know, 2 days, 3 days, a week, a month, whatever it needed to get the United States to a place where we could support the resolution. I felt very, very strongly that those people who supported that resolution then just wanted to put a resolution on the table and expose us. And they did. They succeeded in exposing us. If they wanted to pass a resolution, they would have continued to work with me to get us to a place where we could pass that resolution. And there's nothing I wanted more. And I will say to you, as I said to my staff, as I've said to others, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, besides have babies, was vetoing that resolution, because I became the face of that veto. It was a United States government veto, but I was the face of that veto. And if you listen at the speeches that were given by, say, the Algerians or even the Palestinian ambassador, what he said is, we see how Linda voted, but we know where her heart is, because they had sat with me hours. We were negotiating sometimes to 10 and 11 o'clock at night. So they knew where I stood. And they knew that I was fighting to get that resolution in a place where we wouldn't have to veto that resolution. And had I not vetoed the resolution, somebody would have vetoed the resolution. It was going to be vetoed because the timing was wrong. And we were able to pass another resolution just a few months later that set up the humanitarian envoy for the Secretary General and worked to provide more humanitarian assistance to get into Gaza. But we were all looking and trying to figure out how we could have done it differently, how we could have done it better. Looking back, as you've asked me to do, on that day when we voted on the resolution, we had no choice but to veto the resolution.
Thanks. We'll go next right here in the front.
Hi, I'm Daniel Dresner. I'm the academic dean at the Fletcher School. Ambassador, thank you very much for your remarks. There was 2 questions ago, there was a question about how you would reconstitute the UN. In some ways, I think I want to ask the same question, but for the State Department. We are, you may be dimly aware that there's been some reductions in force there. The previous panel talked about whether or not USAID could be reconstituted, and there was genuine pessimism that that would even be a possibility. I know for a fact that we have Fletcher School students who are going to be interns at the State Department this summer that are going to be desk officers of countries because they don't have anyone else that they can do that job. So my question to you is this somewhat more feasible than the UN that you were talking about? What can be done to reconstitute the State Department?
Wow. Your students who are going to be desk officers, it's a great opportunity. It really is a great opportunity. And let me just preface this by saying any student who is considering going into the diplomatic service, please do it. We're going to need you. We need you now, but we're going to need you later when we start to look at how we want the State Department to look in the future. So I am not discouraging anyone from going into the State Department. Now, I will be the first person to admit, I served as Director General of the Foreign Service responsible for all 70,000 people in the service, firing, hiring, recruiting, everything. And we were constantly looking at ourselves, trying to see how we could do it better. Our approach, and I think it's been the approach of the State Department for generations, is just nibble away at the edges. So we can change this little thing right here, and that's going to make a big difference. Little things don't make a big difference. So do we need reform? Yes. How that reform is going to look has to be strategic. It can't be like what we did with USAID, throw a grenade in the room and just blow it all apart. That hasn't worked. But I agree, USAID, it too was bloated. So it needed to be looked at. And if the Trump administration had asked me what to do, it's like, let's just, we're not gonna go into any new programs. We're gonna sit down. We got 6 months to do it because they were on a fast time frame. I would have said a year, but I'd give them 6 months. And we're gonna do a deep dive into this organization and see what works and see what doesn't work, and what doesn't work is gone. And then we're gonna see how we can do it better. But to blow the whole thing up is not how it should be done. So I don't wanna see the State Department blown up because we do serve a purpose. We are the face of America overseas. And it's meaningful to have American diplomats negotiating. We know how to negotiate. We're taught how to negotiate. And some of us are good at it, and some of us are not so good at it. But those who are good at it are really good at it, and they have made a difference around the world. So I can't tell you how the State Department can be reformed. I can tell you the State Department does need reform. I think it needs to be more strategic than firing people and not knowing and suddenly discovering that you don't have a person sitting on the Kenya desk when you're meeting with the Kenyan president, or you don't have, you have a desk officer who's a newly minted intern who's just learning on the job. And I had interns who worked for me who were damn good, who actually could do the job and were able to do the job, but that's luck. You don't know what you're going to get. So yes, I think reform. I think some university, maybe the Hamilton Lugar School, can do a case study and send it to the State Department and see if they'll read it.
We've got some great diplomacy lab teams working on just that.
Yeah.
And I certainly echo your points both about the importance of American Diplomatic Corps, but also the encouragement to students to continue to look at this as an attractive and viable career path. Right here with your hand up is two in, there you go, yes. Yep, you.
Hi, my name is Meredith Perkins, and I'm a Master's of Public Affairs, Master's of International Affairs student here, and I also work as Assistant Director at our Center for Refugee Studies. In your speech, I really appreciated what you've said about the importance of kindness and how you've highlighted that around the world there's lots of conflict going on that contributes to the increase in displacement and mobility worldwide. These are really complicated policy issues that no one person, no one great power, no one government entity can solve. These are very difficult logistical and humanitarian problems that you've dedicated your career to working on. Something I'm really interested in, and the theme of the conference is, what do you see America's role in the world is when it comes to the global refugee crisis? And what do you think America can feasibly do, or what should it do to help improve this difficult situation? Thank you.
We were doing all the right things. We were the leader in the world on dealing with refugees. As I said, I spent more than half of my career. I was a refugee coordinator in Kenya. I was a refugee coordinator in Pakistan covering Afghanistan. I oversaw our Refugee and Migration Affairs program out of Geneva, overseeing all of the humanitarian agencies. We were the largest contributor, and our money was well spent. We put refugee coordinators and foreign service officers out in the field to make sure that they monitored and managed every dime that we spent to support refugees. We brought the most refugees to this country in the resettlement program. We provided the most support to the World Food Program. We were the largest donor to the ICRC. I talked to UNHCR yesterday. Their budget has dropped because we went from giving them $1 billion to $347 million. And they have had to fire doctors and fire staff and cut the refugee rations down to below minimum standards because we're not there. Others have stepped in, but they can't reach, they cannot reach the levels that we provided. And if people thought that we weren't appreciated, I can tell you we were appreciated everywhere in the world. The reason I still can open the door of every African country and every head of state is because I was a refugee coordinator, and we were bringing things to people who were in need. And it was appreciated, and I think we should go back to being in that place. We were the premier country. I walked with my chest high. I flew the American flag into refugee camps in the middle of nowhere, and people welcomed us coming because they knew we cared. And now they don't believe we care anymore. And I really do think ordinary Americans, wherever they are in the world, in the United States, that they care. No matter what they say, they care. And I've seen it everywhere. I see the missionaries all over Africa. I see Peace Corps volunteers. I see the NGOs. I see students. I had student interns working in Liberia in various ministries, including the President's office, who were giving to these countries. So people saw us at our best. And it was soft power that gave us our power. They knew if we wanted to flex our muscle, we could flex our muscle. And we did. On occasion, on Liberia, we put 200 Marines on a ship outside the coast, and it ended the war. That's all it took, us showing up. So I do think that we should, and again, we can do it differently, but we should be proud that we were the premier country providing humanitarian support to the world, that we were saving lives, that we were building futures and livelihoods for people all over the world, and that people really appreciated that. So you got me on a high horse on that one.
Okay, thank you. Gentleman right here with the Oxford shirt and the blazer.
Hello. First, I want to continue the train of thank yous and say it's an honor to share a room with you. My name is Luke Snyder. I'm a sophomore here at IU studying international studies, economics, and Russian. And my question for you is, in an increasingly very harsh political environment insofar as the attitude towards the international community, especially with, I think the current administration has done an illustrious job of highlighting the U.S. Spending 10x on certain organizations internationally from the next guy, right? So my question for you is, how do you sort of reconcile those concerns, especially for someone in my generation growing up and hearing that rhetoric of why are we even in some of these organizations that we can back out of and do our own thing and not have to spend all this money? So how do you sort of, maybe not the greatest way to put it, but how do you sort of preach the gospel of the international community, so to speak?
I think we engage with other countries. We say, you need to do more. President Trump did that with NATO, and it worked. So we do say to other countries, you need to do more. But I'm going to be honest with you. The vast majority of American people care more than people care in those other countries. So that's why we did as much as we did. If people don't care, we'll do less. But all of that money going to humanitarian agencies, we're going to be the #1 donor to the World Food Program, but you will put an American at the top of that organization to oversee that the organization is doing what it's supposed to be doing. We're going to be the top donor to UNICEF, but there will be an American at the top of that organization to ensure that the organization is doing what it's supposed to be doing. In UNHCR, we always had an American till today as the deputy head of UNHCR, and that's the management of the UNHCR, the COO of UNHCR, to make sure that the money that we were spending was going to the places we wanted to see it go, and that it was spent in the appropriate way that our taxpayers and our members of Congress wanted us to do. So again, just deciding we're not going to be the top donor anymore. I mean, we like being at the top. We like being the number one. But it's not enough just to decide we're not going to be the top donor anymore. We have to decide what our priorities are and what we want to focus our attention. Maybe we don't want to do support World Food Program anymore. Let some other country take over World Food Program. And we're going to do World Health Organization. So we can ensure that health care and our money toward that organization is going in the right place. So I do think, yes, people wonder why it matters. They wonder why we're spending so much. But at the same time, when ordinary Americans see misery in the world, they think we ought to be there. And so we are.
Thank you. Auric, right here in the center aisle. Let's see where the microphone is. There we go.
First off, thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate it. Second off, my name is Art Kadeshi, and I'm a freshman here at HLS. And as the second two questions have posed, the United States is increasingly withdrawing a lot of its funding from the UN at the same time when China and other countries are increasing their funding. So do you believe that this is leading to China dominating the UN, and is that a positive development in global governance? Thank you.
Yes, it's leading to China dominating the UN, and no, it is not a positive development. That's a simple answer. So, Senator Risch would always give me such a hard time about having more Americans work in the United Nations, and that the Chinese need to pay more. Why aren't the Chinese paying more? So the Chinese are paying more. And I said to him, you know what that's going to mean. They're going to pay more, and they will want more. They're going to want to see more of their people in the UN. One of the areas where they have really overshadowed us is JPOs, junior professional officers. These are young people like your students coming out of college. They go and work in the UN as an intern, paid for by their government, by us, by the Chinese, for 2 years, and then they come into the UN system at a P3 level, and they grow in the United Nations until they're in senior positions. So my first year in New York, we were paying for 50. The Chinese were paying for 500. And we were able to get private sector money. This is how important this was to all of us. Working with my team, we got private sector money from the Smiths Foundation to fund 2. And my plan had been to go to every business I knew to get them to fund 2 so that we can grow our people in the UN. So we're very good at getting our people in these top positions where we provide the funding. But believe me, if the Chinese start to give more funding to World Food Program, they're not going to let an American be in charge of the World Food Program. So we have to stay engaged. Right now, our arrears to the UN is $4 billion. And the Chinese have some arrears as well, but they are paying their dues. At some point, they are going to overshadow us, and before we know it, they're going to be heading all of the major organizations because they are the major donor. So I want us to be number one because it gives us influence. It gives us influence on who the UN hires, who they put in positions. When we want a special representative for the Secretary General to be in the field in a particular country, and we want it to be an American, we can go to the Secretary General and say, you're going to put, as an example, Jim Swan, who was a Foreign Service officer, as the SRSG in DRC. And they know they have to do it. The number 3 position in the Secretariat under the Secretary General is an American. Dorothy, I'd love you to have that job, by the way. it is an American. I heard some rumor that we might be giving that up. We can't give up that position. That's a powerful position. But we got it because we're the biggest funder. And so, again, money talks. And we had the money to talk. If we stop paying the money, we can't talk.
It is wonderful to see so many hands. We got time for just a few more questions, though. Let's go, gentleman in the back center aisle with the blue blazer.
So, first of all, a little bit. I just want to say first a comment and then a question. The comment is thank you, Ambassador, for beginning to pull back the nuances and the complexities that are associated with humanitarian development work. It's not an easy, you do this and you get this. There are also consequences that influence both your domestic policies as well as your foreign policy, right? So I appreciate you saying that. I'm Rashad Nelms, by the way. And so I worked for the United Nations World Food Program for 18 years. So as you were talking about referencing WFP, I just want to say thank you for that. Here's the question. Given the retreat or reduction in US allocations to multilateral institutions, primarily, let's say WFP, UNDP, UNICEF, other agencies, do you anticipate, and you referenced it a little bit with China, but do you anticipate an increase in bilateral aid in order to make up for that gap from other governments? Or do you foresee CSOs, both national as well as international, filling that gap? Or is the gap financially just too big and it's never going to be filled? Thanks.
The simple answer, again, is all of the above. But we have seen actual private sector companies jumping into this space. We're seeing a lot of CSOs trying to jump in the space, but their money is being cut as well. So they can't jump in full board because they lost a lot of their funding, a lot of it coming from USAID. And other countries will give more, but it will never make up the amount that these organizations need. We're seeing humanitarian crises grow and grow. We have over 1 billion people who are displaced. There are more refugees. When I was in Kenya in the 1990s, we had 320,000 Somali refugees in the Dadaab refugee camps. I think that number is now close to 700,000. There were 50,000 Sudanese refugees, South Sudanese refugees in Kakuma. That number has grown to over 100,000. There are close to 1 million refugees in Ethiopia. And as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, there are over 1 million Sudanese who've been forced from their homes. So the needs keep growing and the money is diminishing. So I think we're in a crisis, and I don't have the answer to that. It can't be the United States. We can't pay for it all. But decreasing the amount we're paying is certainly having an impact on people. We've talked about the number of people who've been impacted by the closure of USAID, the number of people who have died, the number of people who are not getting needed medicines. The silver lining in all of this is that countries themselves now realize they have to step up to the plate. When PEPFAR was taken out of Nigeria, Nigeria came up with $65 million. So I think where we have to turn is to these countries to help them prioritize their own people and help them manage their resources so that they're not so much in need.
Thank you. We've got time for one last question, and Celine.
Thank you. I know I've been quite persistent, but
I have quite a personal question. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Celine Yang. I'm a sophomore here at IU, studying International Studies and East Asian Languages and Cultures. I'm also the Hamilton Luger Student Government President. And earlier you stated that kindness is oftentimes seen as a sign of weakness. And I think that rings especially true for women within your field. And as a woman within politics here at the Hamilton Luger School, which is represented by a 70% female student body, do you have any words of advice, especially to women of color here, and words of affirmations for women who want to be in your position one day? Thank you.
You know, what I say to all women, people of color, wherever you are, live your own reality and live your own strengths. Someone asked me, how does it feel being a black woman and the US ambassador to the UN? And I said, I don't know. I am the US ambassador to the UN. So when I walk in the door, I'm not walking in the door as a black woman. You may see that, but that's not what I'm feeling. I'm feeling that I'm representing the most powerful country in the world, and I'm flying the American flag, and I'm an American, and it doesn't matter whether I'm black, white, or blue. I am the US ambassador. And so there is a tendency for people to define you. Don't let them define you. You define who you are. You define how you will present yourself. You define what your priorities are. You know, I'm a crybaby, and you know, I'm a big girl, and people don't expect me to cry. And if I see something that makes me sad or happy, I'm gonna cry. I don't care where I am. I could be standing here giving you a speech, and I can think of something that's gonna make me cry. You're gonna see tears come out of my eyes. And people would say, oh, that makes you look so weak. And I'm like, really? So I'm different because tears come out of my eyes, because I feel pain. That's who I am. It doesn't change what I am. It doesn't change how I do what I am. It doesn't change my success or failure. It's who I am. And so it took me a while. I'm saying this after doing this for 40 years. Probably the first 15 years of this, I wasn't feeling this. I was trying to feel my way, trying to figure out what to do, how to be a good mother and be a good officer, how to do what they call the balancing act. And I finally realized there's no such thing. There is absolutely no such thing as balance. You got to find your own place. And I said to people, there were times when my family got 90% and my job might have got 10. But there were other times when the job got 100% and my family didn't get anything. And what you need is somebody else. You need your broader community, your village, your friends to back you up when you got to give the job 100% and you have 2 little kids at home who need help with their homework. And so you find your community to help you balance, because you can't do it. You absolutely can't. And I was grappling with this whole thing. I'm a terrible mother. Oh God, I need to go to work and I'm not going to work because my kid's sick. So you grapple with all of this stuff. And men don't do it. I hope you do it now, but back when I was growing up, men didn't do it because it was your job to do it. I actually had a great husband who did it. And he was there when the kids got home from school to help them with their homework, and took my 2-year-old daughter to Nigeria by himself while I was in language training. And everybody thought I was a terrible mother that I sent a 2-year-old baby girl with her dad, when we talked about it, and it's like, you can get cheaper childcare in Nigeria than I can get in the United States. And if I'm 5 minutes late, they're going to charge me $50, whereas there you have somebody you can have a live-in. So we talked it out, and we decided it made sense for the baby to go with him. But I was looked down upon because I did that. My mother never got over it. So what I say is, live your own reality. Be who you are. Get strength in who you are. And I always say adversity makes you stronger. flex your adversity muscles and show people what you can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a very, very nice note to close on. Please all join me in thanking Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield for her service and for her wonderful remarks today. And I hope all of you will stay tuned for the rest of the amazing programming as part of this 11th Annual America's Role in the World Conference. Thanks for coming.